We are recording on Thursday, April 18th, 2024 at 10:09 a.m. Eastern Time with Mr. Robert Spencer. You can go into the description. Please go follow his Twitter, go to his website. I believe it's Jihad Watch. I know it is, but .org, .com, whatever. It's in the description. And real quick, guys, the podcast is now being sponsored by Frank Speech, Mike Lindell's video platform company. Please go into the description and check them out. Anyone that supports free speech is definitely in my book because I've been banned from so many platforms, as well as Gold Genesis Group. Again, I interviewed truckers as they were on their way to Ottawa in 2022, and they all got their Bitcoin wallet seized. So, I mean, it's a lot harder to seize a physical piece of gold. So, again, please go into the description. But Mr. Spencer is he's a future podcast star. He doesn't know it yet, but eventually I will coax him into it. And that's about all I got for that introduction. So, Mr. Spencer, how you doing, sir?
Great. How are you, man?
I'm
Good to see
doing
you.
fantastic. Thank you. You as well. And so, it's I guess it's never like it's like a bad canary for world events if I reach out to have you on the phone or not on the phone, on the podcast. It means something bad's happened. I think right after
That's pretty
October
much all the
7th.
time these
Yeah.
days. Yeah.
And then now I'm like, reach out to you. I'm like, that maybe I should make a note of that. Of like the frequency of text to Mr. and just like plot them and realize maybe that's how I'll extrapolate and find out when World War III starts. But um, on the topic of World War III, for the 100,000 foot view, is this the same old tit for tat that's been going on since the dawn of time, or is this escalating and coalescing into something larger?
Both.
All right.
It's the same old thing. And yet at the same time, what did we see with World War One? But that what appears to be a minor incident can suddenly escalate until you've got into a situation that nobody wanted.
Hmm.
And that could very easily happen. It could happen today, it could happen tomorrow, it could happen in 6 months. Maybe it won't happen. But eventually the whole thing is going to come apart. That seems pretty apparent. The United States can't go on this way with, as Lincoln said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And with this traitor criminal class in charge, and apparently with a stranglehold on political power, I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh no, Trump's going to come in and no in January and it's going to clean everything up." I don't think that the problems that the nation faces at this point can be cleaned up by one man or one presidential administration. And anyway, even if he did win, which I think is an extraordinary long shot, because not because he wouldn't win a free election, but because free elections are a thing of the past.
Hmm.
And the idea that the people that have been trying to destroy this man since 2015 and have thrown everything they could at him and are going to throw far more before November, uh, that they're just going to let him walk into the White House again on January 20th, 2025, I think that's inconceivable. But okay, even if they did, even if everything goes wrong for them, because after all, these people are not superhero criminal masterminds. This is
Yeah.
not Dr. No or something. These
Yeah.
are these people, they make mistakes. And so Trump could walk into the White House despite my suspicions next January, but then they'll throw more at it. And there's even talk now of actual legislation to limit presidential power. And all of this hinges on the Supreme Court, and you take out a couple of people on the Supreme Court and appoint other ones that you like better while your guy is still in the White House, and that problem is solved. I'm not saying that there's no hope. There's always hope. It's never over. Even
Hmm.
when it's over, it's not over. Because even if they completely crush Trump and reelect Joe, and it looks like they've got a clear hand to establish a totalitarian, internationalist, super mega state that destroys the human spirit, even then, something's going to go wrong. There's some way that they're not going to be able to foresee controlling human beings, and something will crop up where the human spirit will not be extinguished. That's all true. In any case, however, at this point, it's even if he gets in, it's there are too many people who are entrenched in the Washington bureaucracy for him to be able to just turn things around on a dime.
Hmm. Yeah, on the hand of eventually turning around, like it's not that there isn't a chance that they're going to set up a totalitarian, technocratic, dystopian hell. Not, it's pretty good, but the fact that we're here today tells me that it won't last. It's a, you read any, either personal or public writings from any leader or megalomaniacal general throughout all of the dawn of time. Now, it'll give away the dates if they like mention a weapon, like our spears will do this or our tanks will do. But if you remove that, it's all kind of the same. Remove the nation that they're representing. I'd say even remove the language, just translate it. It's all the same. It's like our great empire will be something like the world's never seen. Our enemies will, be thrown under our feet with we will use relentless power and they will talk of this day for 10,000. It's all the same thing. It's be it
Yeah.
World War I or be it I don't know, like the fall of Rome. It's all the same. So
Mhm.
that will eventually come to an end. Um, but the one thing I always look at that's just a little hairy to me, not hairy in a good way though, is the fact that Trump got in at all in 2016 to me
Massive
is
failure on their part. They didn't
you
see
think
that.
it's
That's why Hillary was throwing lamps around the room and stuff because
yeah,
he thought it was going to be a coronation. They had it all sewed up.
but it's you don't get in at all without the head nod of some very powerful people, be it public or private. And that's just, I don't have anything other to elaborate on that, but I do always look at that. Like you don't get in without it's not that 2020, it's the same thing with COVID, right? It's at first you're like, man, I can't believe these institutions have been so corrupted. And then it starts to dawn on you. It's like I always use this analogy. So when I got arrested for drinking when I was 17 and the cops made me call my dad, which was worse than going to jail. And he came and picked me up at like 3 in the morning. And I tried to tell him that A, I'd only had one beer, even though I could barely talk. And two, this was the first time I'd ever drank. What are the odds that the first
Yeah.
time I ever drank I got, and he was like, oh wow, first man. And it's like, so with COVID, you go, it starts to dawn on you. You go, this isn't we're uncovering it. Same thing with the 2020 election. It was so in your face.
Yes.
The more you start looking and you go, what are the odds that that was the first fake one, right? 63
Oh, not
Kennedy.
even close.
Well, so my
1960, absolutely. Kennedy, the Kennedy Nixon election.
well, Kennedy
And
getting in and
I'm
getting
sure that
out.
was the first,
Yeah.
uh, but there was extensive evidence
Well, his
that
dad got him
uh,
in.
Illinois and Texas
Yeah.
East had been stolen from Nixon in
The help of the
1960.
mob.
And oh yeah, and that would have put him over right there. And he himself quashed it. He thought that it would look bad in the middle of the Cold War for the United States to have some big investigation of a stolen presidential election. He said that you don't steal the presidency of the United States.
Oh,
And
God.
well, yeah, you do.
Uh,
And that wasn't the first time, and
No.
2020 wasn't remotely the first time. But it still staggers me, Tommy, that you have people saying this stuff that is all just conspiracy theories, and clearly the 2020 election was all on the up and up. And I think, oh yeah, come on, you got the people counting the votes in Detroit covering the
Putting
windows
the
so people can't see what they're doing, and you
yeah.
got the people on film in Atlanta, on video in Atlanta, pulling out the boxes of the ballots and throwing them into the tally when they
Yeah.
think everybody's gone. And you've got so much stuff like that, and then we're supposed to say, oh yeah, it was all just fine. It
Yeah.
was all completely honest and above board.
Well, you have a lot of idiots that believe that, and then you probably have a lot of people that know deep down it wasn't good, but they hated Trump so much they didn't care.
Yeah,
My point is though, is so if we're establishing and agreeing that they haven't been free and fair in a long, and every election will always have something, throughout just the history of the world, but specifically in the United States, to me, it does go back to 2016 of, well, then how did he get in? There had to, for better or worse, maybe it's controlled opposition, maybe it's another nefarious group within the government that they wanted the reins. But if they're not free and fair, he still got in 2016.
I think
To
they
me,
just made a mistake.
I don't think.
I still think that I understand what you're saying,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
agree with you that
Okay.
you got powerful people who are engineering these things, but I think they just screwed up.
Really?
that it was the fix was in, and they were cheating as much as they cheated in 20, maybe not quite as much because they didn't think they had to.
Hmm.
All summer we heard, and fall we heard how much of a lead she had. And they start believing their own nonsense and thinking they've got this in the bag, and they had everything nailed down, and it just wasn't enough. I
Hmm.
think that if the true vote tally were ever to be able to come to light, and I don't think it could because the cheating is so baked in, but if we were to know the honest votes in 16, Trump won big.
Hmm.
This is an extraordinarily unpopular candidate they had, and she was bringing nothing to the table. And in the general election cycles of American history, you often have a turnover after 2 terms. And so everything pointed to a big Trump victory. And yet he just barely squeaked by. He didn't win the popular vote and so on. Seems to me they had the whole fix in,
Hmm.
they had it all set, and they didn't do enough. They just got caught off guard.
Hmm.
I could be wrong, but I think that yes, all the powerful people had it arranged, but they had it arranged for Hillary to win, and they were sure she was going to, and uh, it just got out of hand. Sometimes they just can't control everything, and that's the source of hope we have going forward. That the fix will be in this November, and nobody should kid themselves, and they're going to put Joe Biden back in the White House. I think that's virtually certain, but mistakes can happen and they might screw up again.
Yeah. And then even not mistakes. It's they might not make a mistake at all, but it's so overt that
Yes,
that is a that is something they, it can't be that overt. I mean, the last one was pretty bad, but this is almost like something where it's bad for them regardless. They definitely don't want Trump in. It's gonna be even worse, not just because it will categorically and objectively be more dishonest in 2020. You have more eyeballs on it than ever before. Imagine if a new vaccine rolled out right now for whatever. Would there be, regardless of its safety, there would be more eyeballs and more people looking into it than ever before in the history of man,
that's
right?
true, but they'd still put it over.
Oh,
I'll
sure.
tell
No,
you,
oh, sure. Or I'm with you.
I've been doing a lot of traveling lately. Uh, I've been getting a lot of invitations to speak, which is great, but it means that I got to fly all over, which is not so great. But one thing that I've noticed is that there's still in airports and on planes every day, 20-30% of the people are masked. And I think, have you been living under a rock for
Yeah.
the last 3 years? You don't know that the mask thing was a scam from the beginning. You haven't heard that the whole thing was a lie. You still believe Fauci and the World Health Organization. It's just incredible. But there's still a huge number of people out there. And so I think if that's true, then if another pandemic comes down the pike tomorrow, a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, well, okay,
Yeah.
we got to quarantine, and I'll keep 6 feet away from you," and
Yeah.
all this nonsense. Right again, they'll just buy it right away, no questions asked.
Yeah. I was at the grocery store like 2 hours ago and I saw a chick that just had like one of those like industrial like sawdust. I was just thinking like, good God. But to me, so I look at that to me that's that's optimistic. That's hope inducing. Because what you start to realize is it's not one half of the country versus the other half. You realize that most people are neutral. They're neutrons. They have no charge. They just do what they're told. So if you remove them from the playing field, it's actually you versus a much smaller group of, though competent, much smaller group of people. They just they're masquerading as it's 90% of us believe this. The reality is it's like 5% of people don't believe it, 5% of people are pushing it. The other 90% are just going to do what the majority says. So a win isn't necessarily 99% to 1, it's 6% to 4% with 90 in the middle who just go which way. So
I think that's one reason why Trump scares them so much.
yeah.
That when see, something, um, you're a young guy, and so you might not remember, or you might not have been around. But I can tell you, or maybe you know all about this, so I don't mean to be
I
condescending.
don't care.
2016, 2015 and 16, Trump moved the whole Overton window by himself.
Oh, yeah.
That the Overton window is the range of acceptable opinion in the public discourse.
Hmm.
Like when I talk about Islamic jihad, that's outside the Overton window. The powers have decided that that's not acceptable speech, even though everything I'm saying is true and readily provable. It's not acceptable, and so I'm a hate group leader, and I'm demonetized and deplatformed all over the place, and I'm a dangerous individual, a very dangerous guy, and so that's the Overton window. Now, Trump, it was coming after Romney and McCain and George W. Bush as the Republican candidate, and actually Bob Dole before that. And who was 92? Oh, George H.W. Bush,
Hmm.
2 and 88. So you got 88, 92, 96, 00, 04, 08, 12. A lot of Republican candidates in a row, all being rhinos, as they're called, or liberal Republicans, Me Too Republicans. I'll just go along with what the Democrats want Republicans. This impulse actually started with Eisenhower. When Eisenhower was elected, first Republican to be elected in 24 years, and in 1952. And the first thing is that a lot of Republicans were saying, we're finally back, and now we got to roll back the New Deal and end this socialism in America. And Eisenhower said, nothing doing. We're
Mm.
not going to do that. We're going to go along. And he made modern republicanism. The useless Republican Party that we've had ever since is a product of General Eisenhower. And so all through from Reagan until Trump, you had Republican candidates like that who said, yes, we'll do exactly what the Democrats want. We will let them set the initiative, let them set the agenda, let them do what they want. We'll just sometimes say, well, we could do it more efficiently, or we could do it cheaply. But we are not saying we're not going to do it. We're not
Yeah.
saying we're not going along.
Yeah.
So Trump revived a lot of ideas that I think the mainstream, the media, and the Democrats thought were dead and buried. Trump said, we got to guard the borders. We've got to build a wall. Now, whether he built the wall or not, or succeeded in that, I know Ann Coulter hates him because she thinks that he should have built the wall and he didn't, and he only built part of it or whatever. And I think that's all irrelevant. The fact is, he got America talking about border security. Even Ronald Reagan signed a massive amnesty for
Hmm.
illegal in the 80s. And so you got to go back to like Calvin Coolidge to find a Republican who cared about the border. Because I'll tell you something else, Congressman Tancredo from Colorado, who ran for president in 08 solely to draw attention to the border and to illegal immigration. He told me that when he got to Congress, he thought he was going to be the border guy. He was going to be the illegal immigration guy, and that a lot of Republicans would join him in this, and no Republicans would. One time he got the Republican caucus to agree to allow him to show a film. All the film was 5 minutes of people streaming across the border without any hindrance from cameras at the border. And he said there were 200 Republican congressmen in the room when the film started, and 5 when it ended. They all left the room. Nobody wanted to deal with this issue. And he said that the Democrats wanted the votes. They knew that the illegal migrants would vote for them. And the Republicans wanted the cheap labor. They knew that the illegal
Yeah.
migrants would work for under minimum wage. And so nobody wanted to control the border.
Yeah.
Trump was the first guy to put it over on a massive scale. We got to control the border. And now you got Americans talking about that. Not that the border is controlled, not that the issue is over, but he moved the discussion. He moved the Overton window so that was once again on the table when the Democrats and the liberal Republicans thought it was dead and buried. And he did that on a host of other issues. And I think that's why people are scared of him, because would they think they've won, they think they've got this issue handled. They think they've got no Americans even thinking about it as a possibility. because McCain didn't talk about it, Romney didn't talk about it, George W. didn't talk about it, and on back. And none of them dared to buck the mainstream, and Trump did. And so they think if we let this guy back in, a whole lot of things we think are covered are going to be open again. A whole lot of issues we think we've got it all nailed down and everybody's on board with us. And suddenly we'll have to go back to square one and win this issue again.
Hmm.
And so they've got to destroy him.
Yeah, it is, and the value of the Overton window is massive. It's to silence a topic and to slowly push it out. It takes such a long amount of time, very subtle. You can't be too big about it, and then it can very quickly you just put the prison spotlight back on the thing. You have to like stop moving, right? And it the over, but not only that, I'd say even bigger than the border Overton window, or and then of course then there's like the video evidence of him saying to like Germany, like you better watch out, Russia's going to be a problem, or saying like China is a, totalitarian dictatorship that's going to do anything they can to hurt us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Aside from those, I think the biggest one is the deep state. Like we
Yeah.
kind of forget, I always say this, well, most people are at something called the prom. I was reading the CIA Legacy of Ashes by Tim Weiner when I was a normal kid. And I just like I was more interested in that. I was more interested in learning about Star Wars and SDI when all my other friends were getting their licenses. And I've never quite balanced up. Whatever. The idea that in 2016 or 2017 the deep state came alive at all as a topic I just remember thinking, I was like, wow, this used to be on these weird little corners of the internet, and now it's moved so far to where it's like,
Yeah.
all right, granted, there is a massive blob of unelected intelligence, military, financial elite that control the world, and maybe they're lizards. That being said, right? There's like, but that's wild. Like we forget that at all was not
Yeah.
even talked to. It was
Yeah.
lower taxes, higher taxes. It's like, dude, you have people now saying like, all right, granted, Trump didn't get us into a new war. That hasn't happened in. That's insane. But how quickly we just forget that was verboten at all just
Yeah.
5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Well, I can tell you from my own experience. I was the kid I wasn't reading about the CIA and all that. I was just reading American history when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And I've always been fascinated by it. And I wrote a book in 2020 about the presidents. I would revise it a lot now if I had the chance, but well, it didn't sell, so there's going to be no revision,
Start your
no
podcast.
second edition. But in any case,
Start your podcast.
yes, yes, that's a good point. But in
Do you
any
know how?
case,
Do you know
the
how?
thing
Sorry to
is,
interrupt. Do you know? I want before I did the podcast, I taught myself graphic design, and before that, I wanted to do writing. Do you know how many of like none of the writing ever worked? Do you know how many of the things I like wrote of just repackaged as quick little blurbs on the podcast that people have loved? Seriously,
yeah, that's a
it's
good
just like
point. I
forget
hear you.
that. Just I think the line I just said to you, like, granted, the military. I think never got any attention. You say it now, people laugh. It's so sorry.
Yeah, if
Go
you
on
made
now.
that a 5 minute thing, it would be viral. Yeah.
Yep, yep, yeah. But sorry, keep going. So you were right. You were
So
reading
anyway,
about
yeah,
American
see,
history.
okay, so you ask me anything about American history, I know all about it. I'm not boasting, I'm just saying I have studied this very deeply and written a book about it, and I was still naive and stupid
Hmm.
in 2016. I thought, oh wow, Trump won. Now he will be able to implement his agenda. It never crossed my mind, not for a second, that there was this unelected coterie of bureaucrats who were going to do everything they could to stymie him and stop him from implementing his agenda. And it's interesting to note how the powers have dealt with that. That they ridiculed it and they said, "What do you mean a deep state? What are you talking about? These are just honest, upstanding government officials who are working for your good." And now you have the New York Times saying, yeah, of course there's a deep state. Yeah, of course they worked to obstruct Trump's agenda. And isn't that great? Aren't they heroes for doing that? And the idea that these people who nobody has picked and nobody has vetted and nobody knows who they are actually running the whole country and the whole government, irrespective of who is in the White House, that is just taken for granted nowadays. And yet it had never entered my mind, and I think I speak for a great many, maybe the overwhelming majority of Americans, that it never entered their minds that these lemmings, these guys in the cubicles in the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Transportation, they're the real guys in charge,
Mm,
not the guy sitting, not obviously the guy sitting in the Oval Office now, but anybody sitting in the Oval Office.
yeah. Yeah, and I guess I just it might be like a survival instinct where it's like I have to stay optimistic or I'll, jump off a bridge. But it's the fact that we're talking about it now tells me that it's not over. I mean, even another perfect example is Elon Musk buying Twitter. It's like it's like what's like the counterterrorism motto. It's like if we're wrong 1% of the time, they win. If they're right 1% if they succeed 1% of the time, they win, right? If you get a suicide bomber across it, it's a win versus you have to seal it down 1,000% for it to work as a counterterrorist officer.
Yes.
The fact that Elon Musk, like, if you take over all the platforms and slowly have these backdoor things to the DHS and the FBI and the NSA, none of it can get out. And then you have a guy that buys Twitter and starts tweeting the Twitter files. Like, again, maybe it's hubris, but like Trump in 2016, I'm like that doesn't. If that really was, and it is, if that was really just a megaphone for the government masquerading as a blue bird, you don't just, much like the president doesn't just, and now Trump will enact his policies. If we really are postulating that there is this nefarious group, they don't also just play by the rules and go, well, it's a public company and he bought it. Like there's someone or and I'm not even gonna go so far as, and this is why I think it's a little more realistic, is I'm not saying like these are the white hats and these are the good guys. And then this is where the cynicism comes in. I go, no, these are other opportunists that temporarily their interests are aligned with ours. They want to remove the current status quo. They want to remove the commies in government. They're probably going to institute some sort of fascism. It's the other side of the coin. I think that there's probably something like that. So I think there is probably a cadre in the government of people who are opposing the current uh, regime. I don't think it's some like QAnon. I wish it was. I don't think it's some QAnon white hats are going to save the world. I think it's another group of people that are going like, we can pitch it as a counter coup to the commies, and it will be. And we can masquerade it as, saving the republic. And to an extent, it will be. People, they want the border closed. They want free and fair elections. They don't want censorship. And right now, people are so angry that you might be able, the Overton window, you might be moving to a point where you'd have a lot of people like the election who you have the idiots who believe it was fair. And then you have people that are going, it was fair. And in their minds, they go, I know it wasn't, but I just hate Trump. You might have a lot of people that are like, yeah, I know this is a military coup, but I hate seeing trannies on the White House lawn. Like my dad was on Iwo Jima or something.
Yeah.
That's how I think it is. So
Well, I
it's
don't know if there's going to be a
optimistic
military coup
and
because the trannies
cynical.
run the military.
What?
I don't know if there's going to be a military coup because the trannies run the military. I mean, I think this is the most dangerous time in American history because we've got Russia and China and Iran and everything else, and we've got these guys in high heels and this clown admiral saying he's a woman, and these are the people going to defend us. You look at the military and it's kind of a joke, and
Oh
so
yeah.
I don't know if there's going to be a military coup, but tell you, it goes back to Plato. And in the Republic, he says that there are various stages of development in government. And I think it was remarkably prescient in how he describes how governments evolve and how they change. And he says that the stage after democracy is dictatorship. And I think that's pretty clear that that's where we're going right now because we've got these clowns in Washington saying we're going to save our democracy. How are they going to save our democracy? By knocking their opponent off the ballot and putting him in jail. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's going to save democracy right there. And they're, of course, saying that the guy that they're doing this to is really going to become a dictator himself. Now, I don't believe that, but I do think that there is a very great likelihood that what we're going to have is some kind of authoritarian regime in the next few years, whether it's the left's internationalist socialist regime or some reaction to it.
And I think I do think that, the trainings in the military, that is a problem. But again, my point is it's not completely taken over. And I do have to address this and say, like, it's not some like, and then the knights in shining armor are going to come in. I think you're seeing some dudes who are like, oh, the time is ripe for us to be in charge. And
Mm.
I think that it's shifting to the point where you could have a counter, and maybe that's all orchestrated. Maybe you have a counter coup to, maybe that was all, and if that's the case, I mean, then they deserve to win. If they're planning that, I mean, hey, tip your hat. Like, all right, dude, they mopped the court. Like, all right, but I think you're probably going to have some sort of counter movement, and it's almost like, see videos of people driving too fast and they start swerving, you start going, harder and harder and harder until finally it flips. It might just be that you have this far left thing, and you might have, let's say a new Trump comes into office, he might be doing things that Republicans 10 years ago would say that's an overreach. But it's so ridiculous now. They're like, we need it. We need the strong leader to come in and, save the republic and then give the keys back to the people, which will never happen. It never goes that way. But I think that there's probably no way that we're not gonna end up in an authoritarian government.
Yeah.
I'm just not too certain on who's going to be running it. It's rising, so people are going to be more willing to accept the hard turn back.
Yes.
No one really wins in that, so I don't
Indeed.
know. Yeah. So where do we go from there then? Do you think that, is it unrelated or related to kind of all the skirmishes popping off around the world? Is this a system of systems where it's like, hey, America's not the center of the world, shut up? Or is it being pushed to, I don't know, void or cancel the 2024 election? What do you think this is?
Oh, I think 24 is going to happen. I don't know about 28 though. Uh, Depending on what happens in 24, could be the last one. Now, of course, they're saying that on the other side too. Everybody's thinking this thing is going to end. And I think that it is going to end because, like I said at the beginning, a house divided against itself cannot stand. The nation is so divided, not just divided in terms of where people want to take it now, but divided in terms of basic assumptions about what the good constitutes and what a decent society ought to look like. And
Mm.
so you've got, the tranny business, for example, that you've got drag queens in public schools and little kids getting taken to these drag queen shows and indoctrinated into this business. And then you've got other people who say this is evil and it's got to stop. Well, that's going to play out one way or the other. And so is everything else that we're divided on. But I don't see this situation where it just keeps going on while half the people think it's evil and half the people think it has to be done. I can't see it lasting. So I do think that they'll establish their leftist, authoritarian, internationalist, socialist conglomerate megastate, but that it will be beset from the beginning by various insurrections, real ones, not January 6th type,
Mm.
and rebellions and so on. That the ideas encapsulated the in so many minds of Americans and of people around the world that they ought to be able to have the freedom of speech and that there ought to be a free society. Uh, this is not going to go away, and so I think they're just not going to disappear. And so when the authoritarian socialist mega state is established, then there'll be a lot of people going immediately to start to undermine it.
Mm. And it's
I'll be
also,
there. See you
yeah,
there.
yeah. Well, and then it's the idea of, when if you take away everything, then there's nothing to lose. Like, that's a very, you always got to give like your enemy an outlet, right?
Yeah.
Was it
And
Sun
I
Tzu,
got to
the,
pay,
yeah?
Tommy, because I'm 62 and I got heart trouble and I've had a good life
Yeah, I
and
hate you. I'm 33 and I'm healthy. This sucks.
Well, that's good because we need guys that can fight. I can't go out there and fight these guys.
Oh, they'll hellfire me.
Uh,
No,
uh,
I'm a node somewhere. They're going, no, he has a platform, he has connections. They're not gonna waste time letting me become an Ike. Just quick hellfire, which might be kind of cool. I've always joked that'll be the final frame of the podcast is you'll see the Northrop Grumman logo on the seeker head when it's an inch away from my head as I'm like, talking about something. It'll be great. It'll be
that's
wonderful.
before the line goes dead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just it'll be the greatest mic drop ever. But you know, it's also, and I don't know if this is pessimistic or optimistic. I don't really care. But like all things considered, like I was, have you ever seen those YouTube videos of like, and they're all staged, but who cares? It's like the guys that's like, builds a home in the middle of the woods. It starts with like he has to find a rock, and then he like uses
Oh
the
yeah.
digs dirt, and then finds reeds and makes a pot, and then puts the dirt in the pot, and then starts a fire and uses the pot to make clay, and it's just this like self-accelerating. It's like all of human history in an hour, kind of. And he builds a
Yeah.
home, and you just see it accelerating. That's kind of how I view the world, is like that's really what we are. And I think that's why I'm so grateful for just even little thing like this room. I'm like, it's geometric, like the walls are straight. Like that's like
Yeah.
that's a feat, bottled water. Like this is awesome, let alone all the technology. And so I also that also lowers my expectations for people. I'm like, we really are just, I mean, we shave and shower. We're animals though, We will take away food, and in 2 days, you and I are gonna beat each other to death with anything we can find. We will go back to the chip. What?
You'd win.
Oh yeah, I will try. Maybe you might be sneaky. You might talk to me and be like, Tommy, I'm older and wiser than you, and then whack me in the back. It might be something, but when you look at humans through that light, do you see human civilization getting to 2024? We'll call it what, 10,000 BC. So we'll call it 12,000, 24 years of progress. Do you really do you think it would ever get to this point and not pretty much kind of look like it is? Like you'd have a cohort of consolidated power, and then you'd have a slow but realistic majority of people who kind of just want the basic tenets of life. And you're never gonna, it's not gonna be utopia, and it's not gonna be dictatorship. Like, would it not look something kind of like this?
Well, I think it's going to degenerate precipitously from
Oh,
where we are.
sure. Oh, sure.
It already has. I mean, look at the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore,
Yeah.
just destroyed under very suspicious circumstances that are completely normal and nothing to question.
Yeah.
And you have that bridge took, I think, 10 years to build. It'll take 100 years to rebuild.
Hmm.
We don't have, in the first place, everybody's beset by bureaucratic regulations and the environment and all that nonsense that everybody's got to pay attention to and pay obeisance to. And so it's going to take years to get through all the regulations. And then you got to find people who can do it. And you don't have people who are trained anymore, who have a work ethic. They're used to sitting around doing nothing and getting paid, and they're going to go build a bridge. Come on.
Yeah.
We're losing the ability to do things that our fathers took for granted as being doable. And this is something that's happened throughout human history. You look at ancient Athens, and you had Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and Aristophanes and all those guys, and they all knew each other. They all lived there together. And then name the guys from the next generation, and
Yeah.
nobody can. Everybody knows them, but people don't know that they were all friends and all knew each other and all lived at the same time. And nobody knows that within a generation it was all gone. And there was this period of darkness that went on for quite a considerable time thereafter. And so, there are professors who can say, oh no, there was this guy and that guy after that, but they don't have nearly the stature, and they didn't have nearly the influence. And there was a great receding and decline from the pinnacle that those people reached. And it's the same thing now, that things that were taken for granted. Look, for example, another one, Yankee Stadium. Yankees, the old Yankee Stadium, the house that Ruth built,
Hmm.
1923. 1922 and 21, the Yankees and the Giants, the New York Giants, played in the World Series in the Polo Grounds where the Giants played. And the Giants started to get tired of being upstaged by Babe Ruth and the Yankees. And so at the end of the 22 World Series, they said, okay, you're out of here. You're evicted. Go find another place to play. And so but that winter, the Yankees built Yankee Stadium, the most iconic stadium in the history of sports. They built it over the space of a winter and it was ready for the next season. Now imagine if that happened now and someplace two teams were playing and one of them kicked out the other. They would have to find some other place to play that was already existing. There is no conceivable way they would be able to build a stadium, especially a high quality, iconic, great landmark of architecture in the space of a few months. It's not possible. It wouldn't happen. We don't know how to do that anymore. And we've constrained ourselves too much. So anyway, the point is there's going to be a period of immense decline. And our children and their children's children will have a standard of living far lower than what we're accustomed to. This just seems obvious at this point. Also, of course, there are nefarious forces who think that the way we live is bad for the environment, and so what we have to do is kill off large numbers of people, and that'll fix everything. And that kind of thing, population decline leads to a decline of standards of human standard of living, because quite simply, when there are more people who think of ways to solve problems. And if there are not people around, then a lot of problems don't get solved. You see that in the history of the Byzantine Empire that I wrote a history of last year. And you see that anywhere there's population decline, the standard of living declines. And that's what we're in for.
Who are the guys you mentioned? Plato, Aristophanes.
Socrates and Aristotle.
Okay. And
And
who is
they all lived at the same time in the same place. And Aristophanes makes fun of Socrates in his plays, The Clouds. And it was a guy he knew. He saw him walking around. He thought he was an idiot because his head was in the clouds. He was always thinking about, what is the meaning of life instead of getting on with it. And Aristophanes thought he was a dope and mocked him. Anyway, I
who?
digress.
No, no, no. In generations, well, in the generation preceding them,
Preceding them, nobody knows who those guys were. I mean, like I say, there were people like Heraclitus and people like that. I don't think they were
but no one with the
generations
name, no one with the name and the influence.
precursor of the great Greek philosophers. And then there were people who came after who were not nearly as famous, but they're the ones who lit up the world.
And so, and again, I'm fully open to the fact that this might just be. I mean, uh, I don't mean this on a serious note at all. Maybe I should. Maybe I'm numb to it and I'm broken, but whatever. I mean, this past Monday was 10-year anniversary of my older brother's suicide. I've learned to I have to find reasons to get up, right? I have to find reasons to, and I don't mean that's guilt trip anyway. That's just me personally, whatever. So this might just be that kind of instinct that's been developed over the last 10 years. So you say, they lived at the same time, and then after they go, and I don't doubt that. I don't dispute it. But then there's nothing preceding it either. So sure, it went away, but it also came from nothing. So from
Yeah,
nothing
but
comes it
also
all, and then
it
from
ain't
it all,
over.
what?
It's never over. And
That's what
that's
I
why,
mean is so it's going to go back down to nothing, and then from
because they'll have us all sewed up and we'll be the automaton denizens of the authoritarian state that they want us to be. And this is why they've destroyed the educational system, so they can indoctrinate people more easily. People don't know how to think for themselves. They don't know the history. They don't know what they have. They don't care to defend it. But there will always be somebody
yeah.
who will wake up one day and say, hey, wait a minute. Why is it like this? Why can't it be like that?
Why am I here? What is this?
Whole thing will start over again. There are points of light. I don't mean to sound like George H.W. Bush, but there are times of light that are throughout human history that nobody expected and that disrupt the well-laid plans of the people who think they have it all figured out. And so, old Joe and his henchmen, they can't count their chickens. It's not
Yeah,
over.
and that's I guess it's kind of Alan Watts-esque, but he's like, what do you remember from before your first memory? And it's like nothing. It's like, well, from nothing came you, and after you, well, might be nothing. It might be an afterlife. But just flip it in flip it in reverse. It's still nothing, something, nothing. So we don't know any of the people after them. No notable names other than something that professor would know. but there's also nothing preceding that. So it's like from the nothingness sludge came these brilliant names, and
This
back
is
to
true in all fields. This
yeah,
is just human constant. It's
that's what I
true. Like
mean.
I like jazz music myself. All right. So
Hmm.
you've got Louis Armstrong, Jelly Roll Morton, Duke Ellington, and then you get Miles Davis, Coltrane, Mingus, a host of others. I could go on and on, but the point is, name some famous jazz guys from now. There isn't. It's all dead. It's gone.
Hmm.
And it was the same thing. It came from nothing. Who were the great American musicians of the late 19th century? You know, some professors can name them, but
Yeah,
nobody remembers them.
yeah,
And some people know the great jazz guys, and after them, there's nothing. So here again, you have the same phenomenon.
yeah,
And suddenly there's this great spark and all this great achievement, and then it's gone. And it's a it just keeps recurring all through human history in all kinds of arenas.
yeah. And so, like, I guess that's maybe why I'm not nihilistic. Now, I'd like to think I'm realistic. I don't necessarily think it will I hope it does. I'm gonna try to make it happen, but I don't necessarily think it'll happen. But I mean, in terms of like the big picture, is like, yeah, no, it'll always come back. It always, I mean, look at the dinosaurs. Look at like truly like look at what ran the world. Like, we really think about dinosaurs. Like, I know it's just like, but I mean, really think about that. Like, I mean, like bigger than buses, ripping people themselves armor like Kevlar, like knocking over trees and fighting. And it's just like, man, and what's like the next nearest, like a gecko? Like, yeah, I don't think we're gonna be. And then an asteroid comes in, the KT impact comes in, and I think within less than a second, the rock itself was 5 miles underground. It blew up. You can find YouTube simulations of time lapses, the ejecta, not even like a mushroom cloud, the literal Earth's crust turning into a tsunami. And you're just looking at it, you're like, oh man, this thing's over. And for a long time, what, for 1,000 years, for 10,000? No, for millions. And then from the shrew came us, and you went to the moon, and the dinosaurs didn't go to the moon. So it's like, well, was it the end or was it the beginning? Well, I don't know. And so it's the same thing where I look at this and I'm like, yeah, I mean, it might not even be humans, but like it's regardless of, let's just remove optimism, pessimism. Just examine it for what it is. Like, gun to your head, what do you think's going to happen? Well, the dark forces will win for a while, and then the light forces will come back, and they will establish some sort of pinnacle. And the hard times, you'll have some new Greek empire, and of just nobility and family unit and everything. And that will last forever. No, you're gonna run for about 10,000 years. Then people are gonna start chopping their genitals off, and you're gonna say the carbon cycle's bad and combustion's evil. You'll go back down and you'll destroy yourselves at best, if not for a thermonuclear. Well, what about a thermonuclear winter? Even that, I mean, a million years later, some new animal will arise. So
Yes.
what's really going on? It just seems to be just a pattern of biology and chemistry and physics playing out more and more and more. And you have to start to accept that in the worst case scenario of there is a global totalitarian technocratic dictatorship, or in the best case scenario, would they win? There's no violent coup, and the world blossoms into a level of peace never before seen. And lifespan doubles from 80 to 160. And I live to 160. So I was born in 1990, so I'll live to 2150. What happens then? Well, eventually, your heart slows down and you have clinical brain death. So even in the best case scenario, world peace, free energy, bliss, you still die. And that's not
Yeah.
pessimistic. It's like best or worst case, man, you do go to the other side. So I guess to me, I'm like best worst case, it all ends. So I don't know. I try to find the light in it, because if I want to find the darkness, and I spent several years after my brother only seeing the darkness, versus now when I think of him, I have a picture of him right there. I have his tattoo on my shoulder. I laugh when I think of him now. And for years I could barely even crack a smile. Now on his anniversary, I'll tear up. Other than that, I just laugh when I think of him. I'm like, man, if he came back, the first thing I'd tell him, I'll be like, all right, well, Donald Trump became president, and a few things later, and then a pangolin screwed a bat, and we have to wear these masks now. But other than that, like, you missed a lot. I laugh. So I don't. It's important to examine, and human suffering is real, and our input, and are we beholden to God after life, and all that is important. But I also just I think it's the height, and I'm not saying you're saying this. I think it's the height of hubris and ego to think that one side will ever truly conquer the other. I think it just goes
Yeah,
back
yeah,
and forth for eternity.
exactly.
Yeah, so that's my presidential campaign. It's just me on
Okay.
a, it's just me in like an empty Walmart parking lot. Like one guy's on acid. He's like, "I'll vote for you," and I'm like, "All right, screw this, screw this. Dinosaurs should have won." Um, but yeah,
28. 28, you'll be old enough to run,
I will.
and you can say, I'm gonna fix everything. I'm gonna move it back
Yeah,
to when it was right.
yeah,
Yeah,
an asteroid.
yeah, yeah, I'm the asteroid.
When I become president, I will take just a bunch of people cheering. I will take the incentive of DARPA and the free market, and we will build an engine on the moon and push it into Earth and end this once and for all. And everyone's cheering.
A lot of people would love that.
Yeah. And then that's when I'll force people to become good. They'll be like, all right, we got to take that guy. I will be the enemy that unites both sides. I will do that, you know. You
Okay.
just have a doctor looking at this like that's a messianic comp. You need to watch him. Don't let him near
Yeah.
explosives.
Yes.
Like, no.
Yes. The NSA will be on the case.
They already are, dude. They already are. And if you've been on
Oh
here
yeah.
or you're watching, you're on the kill list too. So sorry. But
Oh yeah.
uh Mr. Spencer, I say we wrap this one up. Yeah, guys, please go in the description. Please go follow him on Twitter. Eventually, he will start a podcast because I will continually harass him until he does. And other than that, man, thank you for your time. And as always, I appreciate it
Always
and
good
enjoy
talking
it.
to
All right, brother.
you.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for watching. Please go in the description. Please go follow him on Twitter. Please go to his website. I will text you this episode. And until next time, thank you so much for your time.